Allow me to reintroduce myself.
All right, today I got a couple of special guests. We have Cassie and the other guy, Richard. He is a Scientologist or some shit. What do you do? What do you do?
Close, but not really that. I'm a biologist, and I study the Chihuahuan desert plants, and I have a primary focus in the cactus, and especially their alcohol.
Okay, yeah. Pretty boring stuff. He has a podcast. Go listen to it. What's the name of it?
The People You Didn't Know.
Go watch it, listen, enjoy it. Today we're going to do a little something different. The one thing I actually liked was we had a pre-screening, which was kind of cheating, but we have a direction for today's podcast. And Richard had a thought-provoking question. And today is going to be a little bit opinion, because we're going to give a couple of different viewpoints on a couple of different questions. And Richard, you have the first question. What is it, my man?
So these questions are going to be a little off-putting, and we're not going to necessarily all agree with each other, but I think that's healthy. So the first question is one that my cousin had, he had discussed in depth for a while, and it kind of just popped back into my memory. And it was whether or not we should decide to make prostitution legal. Prostitution has been around ever since the beginning of mankind, ever since we've been writing stuff down. It's usually been accompanied with boobs or having sex or something. But now we're at this point where we're deciding this buying sex is not what we want to define ourselves as. We want to be higher than that, or not necessarily just really be higher than that subject, but just not really associate with it because we think we're better than something like that. We think that's more of a barbaric kind of thing that people used to do, and now we just like to push those kind of things underneath the curtains. But in reality, prostitution is something that happens in almost every city. Here in the borderland, it's a very high problem that people have. I know if you pick up the El Paso Times, you'll usually find an article saying about how some Juarez family decided to sell off their daughter so that they can continue paying bills. So I just wanted to see what you guys would think about that.
So my first question is that what is the defining moment in, like you were talking about the Juarez family selling someone off, there's a lot of arranged marriages. Do you consider that different? So if this family who did this, who sold their daughter to pay their bills, is that prostitution, or does that fall under the...
Well, they would sell, I mean, it would happen differently, of course, right? Usually they would sell off their daughter to an individual person to just have sex with them, or they'd sell their daughter to a person that would eventually become their husband, or they'd sell a person to like a third-person entity that is a prostitution ring kind of thing.
So see, then doesn't it kind of fall into an area of trafficking versus prostitution?
Right. Yeah, it does.
Because just to give you my idea of prostitution is a man or woman offering a service for a price for a short period of time, or in some cases might be a day or a weekend. When it comes to that aspect of it, my opinion is I'm gonna use a legal term. We're talking about inducting a new Supreme Court justice, and Kavanaugh. And everybody thinks he's going to overturn Roe versus Wade. Problem is, that's not going to happen. The aspects of Roe versus Wade is everyone has the ability or the right, the God-given right, to do what it is they choose with their own body, because they are the ones that have to answer for it. So when you're talking about someone saying, you know what, I enjoy sex and I want to get paid for doing it, that's kind of where society is looking at it, because that's the one thing that is selling. Because you look at Kim Kardashian, how does she get famous? A sex tape. And what does she sell? What is she most known for? Her ass. So it's not like she has a great skill that made her famous, that made her a bunch of money. It's sex. And is that the type of prostitution that you're talking about? Because at the end of the day, she still has the freedom to do whatever it is that she chooses to do with her own body, or not do with her own body. Because even in Vegas, they have a legal form of prostitution. If you look at different strip clubs, there is a legal form of prostitution, because they're selling sex, but why it should not be penetration, there is a form of sex going on in a strip club. There is a form of sex that's going on whenever you're talking about these erotic areas and these erotic things where they're spending money for short periods of time of enjoyment. On that one,
porn industry.
Then there's something like sugar babies. Does that fall under prostitution?
What's sugar babies?
Sugar baby is like it's a girl. She can you necessarily don't have to guy or girl. But it's typically a better someone who's good looking that's everybody's attracted to. And like my roommate or my coworker just moved out of her place, and the girl she's with doesn't have a job, doesn't have to do anything. She's a sugar baby. And all she has to do, though, is when these guys call, she has to be ready. If they're like, we're going to the movies tonight, blah, 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 they have to be ready. And they pretty much make their own form of contracts of, you need to be available during these times, this, and they both go into a contract signing that. So, to me, that's a slight break off.
That's getting into it, right? That's almost like a gigolo.
but isn't that prostitution?
Yeah. Well, I mean, gigolo isn't really, you're supposed to have sex with them, but just dine and dash kind of thing.
Well, okay, now I'm glad you brought that up. Okay, so now let's say you look at aspects of a guy going to meet a girl, right? They sit down and have a conversation. Money is exchanged. They don't have sex. Is that prostitution? And the reason I ask that is because in some aspects, there is a service that's involved because you got a little bit of eye candy and there's money being exchanged. So are we talking about the service or are we talking about the act? Because then we talk about the act. Isn't dating a form of prostitution?
Most guys, they're
because
straight, they take them to a steak and dinner. Why? Because at the end of the night, they want to get lucky.
Yeah, because if we eating lobster and steak, somebody at your house getting fucked.
You go to the carnival, I'm gonna get you this toy, and then you're gonna approve of me, and then you're gonna have my babies.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's not black and white. It just isn't, and I think we have to decide whether or not we jump full feet into the pool or not. You know, whether we want to take everything out of the rug or not, and decide, okay, we're okay with this part, but we're not okay with intercourse. But I think it's so deeply ingrained in just who we are as a humanity because we've been doing it for so long. Prostitution. I mean, just throughout the centuries.
I think the biggest issue is we can't define it. Like I gave you the example of sitting down, having a conversation, money is exchanged. That's pretty much a job.
Yeah. No, I mean, you can even think about it as like porn and what you consider pornography. And Radio Lab did a really interesting podcast where they talked about the AI that Facebook uses to find out whether this is pornography and this isn't. And they basically just try to get a percentile of the skin that is showing. And if it's a certain amount of skin showing, then they'll label it as pornography. So, yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think that is where we're just having such a hard time with it, and just defining it is because we don't know where it spills into the next area.
Yeah, because part of what we just discussed is going to see a psychiatrist or going to therapy. Yeah. I go get therapy on my knee, but at some point I take my clothes off and somebody's rubbing on me. Is that pornography? I have to hand over money after it's done. Is that prostitution? Am I a prostitute? But again, we're looking to label people for certain things, and I think the aspect of it is, one, not having a definition for it. And then, for me, when you're trying to label a specific act, you're trying to control that act. You're trying to put a person in a box. Unfortunately, we're all different. Even when we look alike, we're different. Because I can give you 5 different basketball players that's the exact same height. All of them have different skill sets. All of them have different go-to moves. All of them dribble different. All of them do things different. Their hair is different. Their eyes are different. Their hands, the way they open their hand and shoot different. Simply because they look alike does not mean they're the same thing. And even when we're talking about something as simple as legal or illegal prostitution, what makes one thing legal and what makes it illegal? Because at the end of the day, it's still a choice of the person that's doing the act or the participant in the act.
So, as the laws stand right now, you do get caught with a prostitute hotel room, turns out to be an undercover cop, then all of a sudden that can't be legally charged anymore because it is this person's body, or is it still just against the law, period?
Okay. Again, it's such a gray area because, just to give you an example, let's say you're riding down the street and some person you know. Let me rewind just I'm gonna rewind and give you a little more personal. There was a point in my life where I had separated from my family. So I come back to the town I lived in. I see one of my relatives. I picked her up. She's in my car. What I didn't know when I picked her up at the time was she was a known prostitute. This was one of my relatives. When we got pulled over, that's the first thing he said. I was like, no, bastard, this is actually my cousin. I'm wondering why she's out here on the street. Like, what's going on? And he was looking for a reason to write the ticket. Yeah. But again, I was like, no, her mama is, yeah, we related, like, for real. But the long story short was, just her being in the car, technically, they were looking for a crime, and the act was prostitution. Why? Because I was cohorting with a known prostitute. Just like they like to use, oh, you can't hang around a felon if you have a felon, because you're cohorting with other felons. The problem is, if I did that, I couldn't hang around my family members because most of us have felonies. Just being around someone, because they love to say birds of a feather flock together. Her being who she was, they consider it a crime. But my thing is, if we know a crime is damage to personal property, who has she hurt? If she's free to do what she wants to with her body because of Roe v. Wade, why is she being charged with something for doing what she wants to with her own body?
So what's the legal system justification to write a ticket or put a person in jail for prostitution?
Revenue.
So there's no...
What's the legal justification for writing a ticket for jaywalk? Because when you're talking about statutes, codes, and ordinances, you're talking about safety issues. Yeah. They have nothing to do with law. That's why a guy asked me the other day. He said, well, he asked me to prove something. I said, oh, I'm going to give you the easy. Find it in the Bible. Because every right that we have today was written in a holy Bible that they gave us many thousands of years. Because that's...
Copywriting it.
Yeah, exactly. And they've been trying to rewrite it and transpose what they want it to be interpreted as. But it has not changed. You know, mind your business. Keep your hands to yourself. Don't fuck with anybody. Don't treat anybody worse than you want them to treat you. You know, even Warren Buffett, one of his favorite books, I learned everything I need to know about life in kindergarten. That's what they teach you. Mind your business. Don't tell on anybody. Stay out of everybody's face. Keep your hands to yourself and play nice. Those are the same principles. So when you think about law, if law is based on God's right, if it's not in the Bible, how you write me a ticket? Because if you actually think about it, Jezebel was a prostitute. Yeah. There was prostitutes that were in the Bible, multiple. Magdalene. There were multiple, exactly, multiple prostitutes. So it's been around. Did people like it? No, because it was not a wholesome thing. Now, do I have to like everything that you do? No, because you have to answer for it. Does that make it my business? No, because I'm not fucking you.
It's not, but at the end of the day,
exactly. Yeah. You ain't damaging me, I ain't damaging you, and we all good.
Let me ask you this. Do you think that we would see a spike in abortions if something were like that to happen? Or what do you think? How would you...
I think if...
Because that's the first thing I imagine the Christians putting out there, or the right wings. Well, we're gonna have to pick up the slack again if this were to happen, and now it's legal. Would that be where would they both have to come to a mutual agreement, sign a contract before this happened if something were to happen?
I think now it would be pretty much just like how a corporation is run. They would try to take care of a lot of those aspects, like diseases. You know, screening would have to be done before you had sex with a prostitute. You know,
what about the women that we don't know are prostitutes that just sleeping with a whole bunch of men?
No. Well, I mean,
these men that's sleeping with a whole bunch of women. Totally. We don't know them.
No, I mean, like, once if it ever becomes legal and ever becomes into like a corporate kind of thing, where they have big ass buildings like a Starbucks, and like you can go get your fuck on real quick.
But did you see that? See what I'm talking about though? What about the people that are not going to those buildings? What about the people that are actually just out here fucking?
That's true.
You know, where are we leaving those people at? What I was getting ready to say about the abortion fact is, let's take the legal or illegal prostitution out of it. You look at a place like China, has the highest population on the planet. They got literal billions of people in a small confined place. They have a governmental limit on the amount of children that they can have. So doesn't that mean at some point there is either medical surgery that they have to have because they don't have the right of their own body, or they have to have some type of medical procedure to get rid of the baby? So at some point, yes, but then you'll have things like the morning after pill. Mm-hmm. Those will become more readily available. It's leaking into a lack of responsibility type deal. versus actual control of my body. And I think that's where a lot of the I need to control you comes, because most people, unfortunately, can't think for themselves. And they don't want responsibility for anything. There would be a spike in abortion. But where is it actually stopping at now? Because we're looking at 12, 13, 14-year-old girls in high school now having babies. So that means somebody fucking somewhere. And we're looking at now parents are having 4 and 5 kids now versus 2 or 3 25 years ago. Things are more readily available because I don't have to physically have sex with someone. I can actually watch them and pay them online. Is that prostitution because I'm not touching them? I'm not in the same room? Hell, a lot of times not in the same country. But does that change the aspect of it being prostitution? And seeing that's where we're at right now. We're at a place where people are looking to limit their responsibilities, but they're also looking to gain more. And the things that people will pay for, regardless of where it's at, they're paying for access. So if the access is there via the internet or some type of television, does that change the fact that it's prostitution because you have somebody doing something that's sexually provocative to another person and they're paying for it?
And I think it'll open doors. Like, well, then this is way out there, but what about there are the people that like, well, if they can pay for prostitution, why can't I bang to fuck my cousin? And there's another moral.
But yeah, I understand that. And literally, that's where we're going, because literally, people are campaigning to become a part of government for that very thing. Because it's like, if that's okay, this has to be okay too.
Yeah, I mean, I see the point, but like, okay, so I think what we have to decide then, because it is illegal, prostitution is illegal, problems come with that. There's the sex trade, there's slavery, there's, you know, countless billions of shit happening worldwide because this isn't accessible.
That's legal to do to pay for sex. At what line do you draw trafficking?
Right.
That's
so
what the fuck they're doing.
Yeah, but usually it's against their will.
Now, I'm glad you brought that up, but there are some women that sell themselves into those forms of sex trafficking because they want visas, because they want to get out of the situation that they're in, and they feel if I can have sex with these 20 guys over here and I can get a visa, then yeah, line them up.
I'm still alive.
And then what's the thing? And then even then, like, what if someone's from Juarez wants to become an American citizen, comes over here and fucks real quick, gets married, divorces 6 weeks later after they get their shit?
Yeah, is that not prostitution?
Yeah,
but
like,
okay, so
you
in a
fucking
world
for a green card,
that's
got to be something.
There is prostitution. People will be more careful about stuff like that. Then.
Are you sure?
No, I'm just saying shit. But this leads me into the next question really smoothly. About people and their control of their bodies and wanting lack responsibility but still wanting to have more shit with it. Euthanasia. Whether we should decide that we want to kill ourselves or not. Whether we have the responsibility to decide that, or it's placed on somebody else's, or if it's just placed into God's hands and we can't decide any of it.
Now, I'm glad you brought that up, because again, that is also a Roe v. Wade matter. That's been argued. Now, the acceptance is the conscious mind doing it. Because any case that's being brought before any court, you have to have mens rea. You have to have a guilty mind. You have to have the consciousness, because intent has to be improved. Competence has to be proved. So when you are medically induced with anything, your mind is chemically changed. A lot of times what they'll have them do, because there are forms of euthanasia, it's not available to everyone, which I think that's the argument. But you have to go off of your meds in order to sign the contract, because you cannot sign or be questioned while you are inebriated.
Well, what about, like, for instance, is it Mormons? Or, no,
Jehovah's Witnesses.
That their kid could be in the hospital bleeding out, and they
no blood transfusion.
No blood transfusion.
Because the soul of the body is found in blood.
Well, that, I mean, like, then, I mean, there's a kid not able to make his own decisions, and I mean, this kid could fucking die. This doesn't happen.
Yeah, my cousin died like that.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was whenever I was a kid. So in Juarez, you can buy like bags of hot Cheetos, but they're like, for some reason, they're already opened and they're stapled. And she ate the staple and didn't know it, and nobody nobody found out about it. None of the doctors could find out what was wrong with her, and they ended up killing her kidneys, just throwing meds at her. And right when she needed the surgery, because they found the staple, my aunt didn't want to do blood transfusions because of the religion. It was an interesting thing to find out about later on in life.
If you're actually brought in to a jail or whatever, a lot of places, even like California, as soon as you're brought in, and Georgia, they either give you what they call a TB shot, because in Georgia TB is like super bad. Like it's not here. Like here, people get, I got TB, and they put on a mask, keep it going. In Georgia, it's like, if we get it, we die. Like, our body's not equipped with it. Like, I don't know. It's like, we got killer TB, because I watched it on TV one day, and it was like, this school has an outbreak of TB, and I was like, oh, hell. And they were like, yeah, the kids go back in school tomorrow. I was like, what the fuck? But yeah, because in Georgia, that whole school is shut down for like a month. Like, they going somewhere else. Yeah. If you say I'm a Jehovah's Witness, they can't give you a shot. They can't take your blood. They can't even do a DUI, a sobriety check.
And that blows my mind that can happen.
Wow, so they at any point they can't do a sobriety check?
No, because you're a Jehovah's Witness. All you have to do is say it. But yeah, you still have to be mentally competent to enter any contract. You have to be mentally competent to pretty much kill yourself. And generally what's happening is you have to come off your meds and you have to knowingly refuse them. Just like a DNR. It has to be in writing, but it has to be done at a point where you are competent.
Whenever I got my...
Well, how is that? But, like, people can just throw their parents in a nursing home when they don't want to go. Like,
because, that becomes a health issue. Because what happens is a lot of times we get to a point to where you may be doing something that you don't even realize you're doing. In doing that, you would require more care than I'm able to give you. Or you may be to a point to where you will harm yourself. So you need 24-hour care. I ain't finna watch you 24 hours a day. So guess what? I'm gonna pay these bastards over here to watch you and pray that they don't do something crazy to you. Because that's all that it ends up doing. Because 90% of the people that are put into those homes are...
I worked in one for a year.
Yeah.
It was not good.
Nobody visits them. Yeah. They just cut the check. In that aspect, it's still not necessarily a choice, but you're not competent to make one. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
But then it goes all the way right back to the exact same things, because you're so medicated, you may not realize what you're doing, or a medication may be affecting you in a way to where you have no recollection of your actions changing. And that's why a lot of people, whenever they're forced to go into personal care homes or you go into hospice, it's not because they want to. Nobody wants to go in the hospital. Nobody wants to go to the hospital. Nobody wants to sit with doctors for hours and get poked and prodded. It's because it's a necessity. And that's what that becomes, because they are no longer competent to stand, make decisions for themselves. Because even with my father, I was the one that actually pulled the plug on my father. And it wasn't because he wasn't conscious. The people that were in line to make that decision, they mentally wasn't healthy enough at the time to make that decision, so it was dropped onto me. Now, I thought it was fucked up because of the relationship that me and my father had literally a week prior. Literally, I hadn't spoken to him for 10 years. I talked to him one time, 7 days prior to me saying, yeah, go ahead. Did that fuck with me? Yeah. Because regardless of my feelings of the person, my father wasn't a bad person. I just didn't like him. But to make a decision about somebody else's life when they're not able to do it, it's still not an easy decision. But you're thinking I think you have to come to a point where somebody has to have some type of rationale. And generally, those are not rational situations, which is why euthanasia is not available to everybody, because they're special situations. Because if you are if you're on the organ transplant list, you don't have an option for euthanasia. But if you in a motorcycle accident and half your face is gone, you're not on that list either, because you can still have a quality of life. It's gonna be fucked up, but you can still have a quality of life. The other guy, you have a chance at it, so you can't get it either. So you got to be real old, real fucked up, and to where even if we did everything, you still dying in a week. That's the type of shit that they're offering it to.
Yeah, whenever I was taking my CPR class, or to get registered for it, one thing that was commonly talked about was about the do not resuscitate. And something interesting they pointed out that stuck with me was whenever somebody is passed out and you're attempting CPR and they come back alive, or they have a do not resuscitate, you gotta do the CPR anyways. Even if they have a do not resuscitate bracelet or it's tattooed or something, you gotta go ahead and do it anyways, no matter what.
Yeah, because you have an ethical duty.
Would
And
that,
if they
would that fall on your shoulders if
Yes.
that did come about?
Absolutely, because you have that certification.
Yeah.
And if you don't, or if you perform CPR and they come back alive, and then, some miracle they pass out again, you're supposed to do it again, even though they told you do not resuscitate, do not bring them back to life. You have to continue doing it.
Basically what it is, you have to do the minimum. When someone has a DNR, you have to do the minimum. And what that means is, yes, you have to perform a level of CPR. But I do think if they're passed out, you can't give them any medication. You can't do any of that. You can perform the minimum, which is CPR. I believe that's how that's written. I have to check on that one. But yeah, I do know. Because here's the double-edged sword. If that happens in a hospital and he resuscitates him in a hospital and he wakes up in a hospital, he's liable because he just violated contract, which then breaches his oath, which is also breached if he does nothing. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really funny.
Because it becomes discretion then.
Dealing with this person's life. And it's all just based on the law of it.
Yeah, because the legal aspects of it is, yes, you have an ethical duty to uphold. Yes, you have an ethical duty to preserve life. And I don't exactly know what the hell the Hippocratic Oath is. But if you do it, and I have a contract, which is a blanket contract, you have to follow it. Again, Roe v. Wade. Do I really have control or choice of what to do with my body? Because we just named, 10 examples of, not having any control? Mm-hmm. Or any say?
That's just 2 subjects right there.
And that's where we are. Because that's why you have a lot of this turmoil. Because when people think about him potentially overturning Roe v. Wade, it then, just like we talked about prostitution, it then opens the floodgates to what else can the government do? Because if it's okay now, what else are they going to attempt to do?
Well, I mean, as far as prostitution goes and having kids and whatnot, we have already, just America, we've gone through several attempts of sterilization. Yeah, America's had a dark history of sterilizing, its poor communities, of sterilizing people that they didn't really consider to be wanting to be part of their country. And so I don't think it would ever turn into a point like that with prostitution, because we've already come to that point and people are still so very aware of it. So that's a nice point, but I don't know. I think these are all topics that we need to just be talking about more and deciding where we want to not have responsibility for and when we do want responsibility. We need to draw these lines, or else it allows government entities to draw the lines for us.
And as we wrap up today, Cassie, any closing thoughts?
I personally don't think it's just. I think we'll open too many issues will arise, just like with the Facebook thing that we were listening to with the breastfeeding. When is it appropriate and when is it not? You saw all the comments that came, and then it became, well, if the nipple's showing, and then both the nipples could be showing, and then it's just there's no easy solution
What the hell,
to it.
breastfeeding with both the titties out?
Yeah, so Radio Lab did a podcast about Facebook just entirely, and one of them was a lot of mothers were getting mad because they would post pictures of them breastfeeding their children, and that would get taken off. And it started out really innocently.
Hold on. Here's the asshole in me for that.
Yeah, no.
Why do you have to post the picture on the internet?
Hold on, but here's my question though. Okay, their breastfeeding gets taken down for whatever reason. However, all these women can post pictures of their naked ass children in the tub, and that's cool. Yeah, they're 1 and 2 years old and shit, but they're naked in the goddamn tub. Why is that cool and breastfeeding isn't? That doesn't make any goddamn sense to
then
me.
in the same sense, if you were on the internet and you looked up naked babies on Google in the tub, you're a fucking pedophile.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, hold on, you can post that, but you can't post feeding the child. So the baby can't eat, but he can be naked in the tub. I mean, I don't understand that. Because when you say stupid shit like that out loud, it's like, hold on. Yeah, that does not make a whole lot of damn sense.
But then people start getting even more upset about it, and they're like, okay, I'm going to see how far I can push this line. And once they started accepting the just normal, you know, getting covered and feeding the baby and no nipples showing, then they start being like, oh, I'm going to have a nipple showing. I'm going to have a little bit of areola. I'm going to have my other nipple showing. And then so Facebook started an algorithm where they're like, it's only, you can't show the actual nipple. It can only be a certain amount of areola, but anything else is accepted.
And then it came up to where even there was a video of the girl in India or whatever breastfeeding a goat, because when there's like a drought or whatever, it's their cultural duty to make sure the young ones still eat. So they'll any girl that is lactating will feed their baby and feed the baby goats. And this image popped up on Facebook and blew Facebook's mind for a minute, because at that point, Facebook's worldwide. Necessarily what we do in America is right for India. And
to me, that's bestiality. I don't care what anybody says. That's bestiality.
I mean, but they wouldn't survive if those goats died. And this is their only way of feeding the goats.
I don't need to see it on my timeline, though.
For real, though, and that's what we have to go back to with the breastfeeding, is why do I need to see this on my timeline? Why does this need to be shown to the world? Everybody knows that.
Okay, I'm going to go. I think we should have a choice on what we see on our timeline. And that's what we don't have. Just because I'm your friend, I don't want to see everything you're doing. I don't give a shit about your taco lunch.
That's true.
But I think, it's your page, post the fuck you want. But I don't need to see all of it. You know what I'm saying? If I go on your page and then I start clicking on your pictures, that's something different. But if it's just rolling down my timeline, no, I don't think. But again, Facebook is pretty much a work in progress. It's, correcting as it goes. Nothing is perfect, but at the end of the day, I don't want to see it. If you want to feed your baby that way, God bless you, because you're going to have some huge ass kids.
One thing about prostitution is, if we are going to do it, there needs to be places that it's done. Just like if we were to legalize all drugs, there needs to be a safe place for these things to happen. Because not everybody's going to go wander down the street and know that you're fucking prostituting.
Well, see, these are the exact same conversations that they had about alcohol. Until government can find a way to regulate, it's going to be an issue.
Well, and this is something that's, like you said, about your body, so that's going to open up and,
Mm-hmm. Because just like we just talked about, if we say this is okay, that's got to be okay, and that's got to be okay, and then where the hell do we stop?
Yeah, right?
Then we need to decide what we want to make it okay and what we don't.
Well, then, because somebody's going to feel
alienated, accounted for it,
or they're going to feel, personally attacked. Well, shit, if Sally Hoo can go suck dick on the corner of the street.
Sally Hoo.
I'm just trying to bang my cousin, like.
It doesn't have to be this hard.
But again, we literally have governors and senators campaigning on sleeping with children, or marrying children. I take that back, 12-year-olds marrying siblings and having sex with their cousins, and that's literally on the ballot in 2018. I'm not talking about 2018, something that we got to vote on in less than 6 weeks. But at the end of the day, again, it's a form of control. Where do we limit that control? Because if we can't control ourselves, we're telling somebody else to do it, but where are we limiting their control of our body at?
So what's the answer?
Fuck you is mine. Came with me and leave with me.
Yeah.
Because honestly, whenever
it's not hurting personally.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, I personally don't see an issue with prostitution. Whether I go on a date or I go pay a chick on the street, at some point I'm spending money.
So
at some point I want my dick sucked. At some point I want you to goddamn leave.
At this point though, what is considered harming another person? Because say this husband or wife, whatever, is doing this behind their significant other's back. Is that considered as harming someone else?
Hold on. Whoa. See, now you going to... The prostitute ain't harming nobody, and the person that's having sex is not harming the prostitute. The mental aspects of what they doing is because they not being honest.
So mental issues wouldn't fall under.
I wouldn't consider the mental issues harm. Because
Or kids.
Because now we're in a participation trophy society. Because we're talking about a matter of comfort. Because even with that, if I can't be honest with you and tell you, look, I'm tired of having sex with you, I want to go fuck this broad down the street, I start lying to you, that reflects on me. If you have issue with it, even after I tell you it and you do nothing about it and then you cry and whine, that means to me you are trying to manipulate and control me. Because again, now you're trying to control my body, what I'm doing with. If you're not going to help me with my needs, I need you to not have a whole bunch of issue about what I'm doing to satisfy my needs. Again, I still have to be honest, because if you're making a choice to be with me and I'm making a choice to be with you, I need to be with you. Because nothing that affects me does not affect you. Same as nothing that affects you does not affect me. You know, because we are one. We are that unit. And that's where people are missing it at. Because I'm going to give you something simple. A chick put up on Facebook, because Facebook is the devil.
Devil.
It's the devil. Breastfeeding goats and shit all on my timeline. But no, this chick goes, if you're in a relationship, should a woman consult her husband about cutting her hair? I said yes. She said no, because it's my hair. And I told her, no, it's not. The second that you said I do and y'all had sex, y'all became one. So that is his hair. He then became the decision maker. Y'all have a discussion, but it's his decision. I said, because either that or you did not get married under God's law. She was like, well, no, that's stupid. No, bitch, you need to read it. Because when you become one, your body is no longer yours.
So then that means that his body's no longer his either.
Exactly. And guess what? That is written. Because you're one. The only difference is the male, the one with the actual penis, is the decision maker. And nobody is taught that. That's probably why we can't define prostitution.
I just want to break you down a little bit further than that, because you did say you become one.
Uh-huh.
So if my body is his body, then, and he isn't being honest with me about going, down the street, where does that fall in that?
That's his fault. Now, if he gets shanked, that's probably why y'all go home so fast. So, you didn't tell me about Sally. He has a DNR. Where's that? It's at the house. I got to type it. I got to get it.
Don't worry about him. He's just going to die.
But yeah.
This has been fun and opinionated, guys.
I think it's
Roe v. Wade. Somehow in the midst of all this foolishness with legal prostitution, euthanasia, and
titties.
Yeah, breastfeeding. And Facebook.
And I'm Richard Newbold, and I'll see you guys next time.
This is Cassie Graves signing off. Have a wonderful day.
And Supreme Decisions. Until next time.